This podcast contains explicit language.
Bafangu!
Houston, flight is go.
Milo, let's go. SPM. Safety contact.
From Assignment X, thesoniashow.com, and Amalgamated Storytelling, this is the Dorking Out Show, the podcast for people who love stories from movies, TV, books, podcasts, and everywhere else.
Welcome to episode 108 of Dorking Out. This is the 16 Candles Deep Dorking Farmer Ted edition. With me today is my co-host, professional writer, and author of the Sonia Show, head geek, Sonia Mansfield.
Hey there.
Hey you, how's it going?
All right. With me today is my co-host, Emmy Award-winning filmmaker and nerd author, Christopher Allen Smith. In this episode, we're going to do a deep dorking out about John Hughes' 16 Candles with BFF of the show, Peter Brown, managing editor of Assignment X. Say hello, Peter.
Hello, how's everyone?
We're doing great. We are glad you're here.
We're so excited to talk about 16 Candles with you. I'm just going to jump right in and say, just in case a listener has somehow managed to not see 16 Candles, I wrote a little summary. So it came out in 1984. It stars Molly Ringwald, and her family forgets her 16th birthday amid all the chaos of her sister's wedding planning. She's also being stalked by kind of the king of the dorks of her high school, played by Anthony Michael Hall, and she's in love with hunky Jake Ryan, who she believes doesn't even know she exists. It also stars Michael... I wrote this down because Smith accuses me of never paying... Schoeffling. Michael Schoeffling.
Huh?
Peter...
What am I getting blamed for? What did I do?
You always criticize me for not trying to pronounce people's names correctly.
Okay.
So I actually researched it.
Schoeffling. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you sensitive about this. Am I wrong? I thought this was a known ongoing issue. I did not mean to... I thought you knew this. You were the one that told me you couldn't do this. I'm now it's my fault? All right, fine.
You're such an asshole. And then Paul Dooley, Justin Henry, and then small roles, John and Joan Cusack. I think that's about right?
Yep, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to go right into it. When I was 13, I saw this movie, and I loved it. Loved it. It was my favorite. I saw it so many times. I recorded it off HBO. I watched it a million times. This movie actually meant something to me when I was younger. I probably could quote the movie from beginning to end.
Right.
Because I think every girl has this dream that the dreamy guy that she has a crush on that doesn't know she exists really does know she exists and wants to date her. So many girls have that, and this movie is that fantasy played out. So, I watched it a lot, and boy, I was super bummed during my rewatch.
Oh, wow, really? Well, I guess, yeah. All right, keep going. Sorry.
Because this movie is messed up. It's messed up. I haven't watched it in a really long time because I think I knew deep down it didn't age well. And, we're going to get into it. I'm sure it's super racist and date rapey. And people are throwing around gay slurs and disability slurs. And, it was a bummer
well,
to watch this one.
Okay, let me ask you this then, because we are going to get into this, and there's this long-running theme on movies aging and culture aging that we've talked about for this show.
Oh my gosh! In my summary, I totally forgot to mention the foreign exchange student. I forgot to mention Long Duck Dong.
Now who's racist?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm so racist.
Which is perhaps the most Asian name that they could have come up with.
Right.
I think maybe like some Ting Wong or Holy Fuck was maybe too clever for them. I'm not sure, but Long Duck Dong was definitely up there in terms of the most Asian name that they could come up with.
We like to make fun of people. Holy fuck. Fuck is a real Asian name. I would just like to point that out.
I know. I know.
That's not made up. So anyway, keep going. Actually, I'm sorry. What I was going to do is, we've had this discussion about movies aging and culture aging and how that changes our relationship to it. And I really have a lot of, I really see how that works, and we've kind of tried to go through, talk through that as we've discussed different pieces of culture on this show. And I think that there seems to be this kind of, and tell me if I'm wrong, Sonia, this kind of...
You're wrong.
As time marches on, this kind of, we bring movies up from 20 years ago, judge them against our modern standards, and then if they fall below a certain threshold, they become kind of blacklisted movies, where we're not. They're going to kind of be kicked, in a sense, kicked out of the culture. They're still there, but they have a lot of problems. And the more we have these discussions on this, I'm kind of two minds. I want to 100% agree with all of the criticisms and all of the issues pointed out with these. But at the same time, everything in culture is going to get crossed out if we keep doing this. And while that might sound a little alarmist, because we can have discussions about movies from the 70s, 60s, 50s. If we go back far enough, like let's say movies have been around for 300 years. If we went back to movies of the 1700s, there would be nothing left. Even the our highest ideals, our highest the most advanced people of those times are going to look irretrievably racist, sexist, homophobic, crazy, stupid. So I'm beginning to wonder if there might be a different way to have this conversation about the aging of culture that 100% includes where we are now, but also I think we have to acknowledge, this comes up with a lot with Gone with the Wind, but I think we have to acknowledge, especially with 16 Candles, is this movie hit like a thunderbolt for teenagers of the 1980s. This was this and The Breakfast Club were the movies of Generation X for that era. Yep. And if we're going to pretend like, oh, well, they're just racist and sexist and this and this and that, we're kind of, I think, skating by the real meaningful impact. And I think we have to both grapple.
Well, it's really easy for you, Smith, white man.
Oh, knock it off. You are projecting yourself into Molly Ringwald.
They never make movies that, discriminate against white guys.
Okay, here we go.
So
is that the only
so
hobby horse you have to ride? It's easy for you to be like, don't be so hard on the movie with the date rape. I said none of that. I said we need to acknowledge all this stuff, but we also need to acknowledge. I think that's my point. Is that kind of attitude, kind of white guys get it off, and we're gonna write this off, is a kind of cultural blindness to the impact that movies with problems like this have. This was one of the biggest hits of 1984. This is one of the biggest cultural impact movies of the 80s.
No, it absolutely is. I don't want to dismiss it like it didn't mean something. It, like I said at the beginning, it meant something to me.
Right.
Like every movie, not every movie, but a lot of the movies that I was seeing that were about teenagers were like Porky's.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like really not realistic, like raunchy, gross. Like, what if every teen movie was American Pie, basically? Yeah. Like they were all like American Pie.
Yeah.
And 16 Candles does do a great job of portraying teens as teens and what they're doing.
Exactly.
Like teenage drinking, teenage romance, teenage problems with school, and all these different things that they had at the time.
Right.
Despite the fact that yes, it's got all these problems that today obviously are not acceptable and would never be in any film at all. But 30 years ago, or 30 plus years ago, there was no cell phones, there was no texting, there was no social media, there was no immediacy of reactions. Nerds weren't cool back then.
Right.
Now today that's all changed. And so, we can look at it and be like, oh, this movie, it's so terrible because it's racist and it's, they have date rape and, it's sexist.
and those parts are terrible.
And those are.
They are.
It's not destroying them away, but it's also a different time. And I know that's the argument I think Chris was trying to make, that it was a different time. And like a lot of these concerns and things that are happening today weren't, I guess, as important. I guess
actually,
that's old kind of saying that, but
let me step in there a little bit, and I thank you, Peter. I think that kind of helps clarifying is that I'm not so much saying that that was a different time. You have to understand that, because I think everybody gets that. What I'm saying is right now is a different time. And to pretend that we know so much better and we are so much better off and so enlightened and we don't have any prejudices, we don't have any things like this being cooked into our movies in 2018 that are going to look horrible in 2035, we're fooling ourselves. This kind of redlining of culture based on today, really, because I mean, if you were to go back to 1984, we would look back at. Actually, this is a great way to explain this. If we were to go back to 1984, it's like, well, obviously, we're not having any racists in 16 Candles. We're not doing any of this. Oh, yes, we have a couple of fag jokes, but everybody makes fag jokes, and we're not even batting an eye at that. And 16 Candles in 1984 would seem like a modern, with it, up-to-date movie. And now it looks, in a lot of ways, it looks ridiculous. And I guess that's what I'm doing, is I'm kind of pushing back a little bit for any era's conception of itself as, the ultimate arbiter of these kinds of questions, because you go far enough ahead in time, we are gonna look like Neanderthals 100 years from now. And there's no way around it. And patting
we are.
And patting ourselves exactly. And patting ourselves on the back of how enlightened we are, I think it strikes me as a little rich. So it's kind of like I do want to set all of the aspects of 16 Candles on fire, but I want to do it with a little bit of humility, that it's not like acknowledging every era has its blind spots. So
sure.
Let's not pretend that John Hughes or the producers of this movie are uniquely dunderheaded in what they produced.
No, I didn't mean to suggest that at all. What I was trying to say was this movie was special to me. It was something I super loved to watch all the time when I was younger, and now to watch it now and see those scenes.
Yeah.
It's disheartening. It's a bummer. It makes the movie not feel as special to me anymore. Yeah. It's not something that I'll be, when Calvin's older, I'll be like, you should totally see 16 Candles. Like, maybe he would watch it anyway, but
Well, yeah, I've shown it to my sons.
And there's very sweet, there's really good things in this movie. There really are. And there's really sweet, funny moments that, and relatable moments.
Right.
That I think all teenagers can relate to, or all people can relate to. Yeah. And, but for me, like, the date rape and the racism is just a little too much.
Let me ask you this.
Yes.
Molly Ringwald's journey through this movie, that's the heart of this movie.
Yeah.
How do you think that has aged?
I think now I could see like somebody watching it and going, well, everything's based on a boy, right?
Right.
And that's not empowering, or that sort of thing. Like, I mean, she basically skips out. She doesn't basically, she does. She skips out on her own sister's wedding so she could go hang out with a boy that she likes.
I can imagine a couple of teenagers I know, and maybe was, pulling something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely not out of the realm of possibility.
Say, like, I think that journey still is relatable.
Well,
definitely.
And let me ask you this, because, yeah, that's what this movie's about, but that's what this movie's about. It's about a girl's yearning to have a connection with the boy. It's not like it's not like it's a biopic of Molly Ringwald and her Molly Ringwald's character, and her character so dunderheaded is just focused on this. This is her dealing with first love, dealing with having a crush, dealing with they have that great line. The reason they call them crushes is because they hurt so much.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like Say Anything is about John Cusack focused on a girl, but I don't know if that's any kind of detriment to that story.
Right.
The reason I was now I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb here, and I want to kind of and I make all this fun of you, Sonia, and I make a lot of fun of you for mispronouncing names.
Yes.
Ged Watanabe. Watanabe, I could say that's his last name. But Gedde, how do you say that?
I think it's Getty.
Getty? Might be.
I think so.
Gedde Watanabe, Broadway-trained actor, plays Long Duck Dong. And I was looking at an interview of this, and in a weird way, I don't know if you remember, we had a discussion about Mr. Went and Mr. Kidd from Diamonds Are Forever being gay, and how they were a lot of bad stereotypes. I can't remember which episode we had this discussion is. There were a lot of bad stereotypes having to do with kind of gay culture and all that kind of stuff, and they were the hitmen against James Bond and Diamonds Are Forever. And I was wondering, do you remember any of this, Sonia, or am I walking very far out on the limb here?
No, I remember we had this conversation.
Which is essentially one of the reasons that those stereotypes are damaging is because they're dumb stereotypes. But another reason those stereotypes are damaging is because they're the only portrayal of that segment of society on screen. So when, and this happened a lot, this was a big brouhaha when Basic Instinct came out, whenever gays showed up on movie screens, they were either the punchline or they were the killer.
Yeah.
And Mr. Went and Mr. Kidd and Diamonds Are Forever were both. But if you looked at them in the context of a lot of different types of gay portrayals and a lot of different kinds of movies, kind of like we have now, I think you could pull out a Mr. Went and Mr. Kidd in 2018, and they would be fantastic, beloved, crazy, Joker-like icons. I think they would be fantastic characters. And I'm wondering, in one of the interviews that I read with an interview for Ged Watanabe, he kind of talked about the same thing in that one of the problems with this movie is he was it. There were so few Asian characters that when you have an Asian character come on screen and he does this, there's nothing to set it against.
Yeah.
There's no... Now, having said all that, the gong joke is very difficult to...
Oh, it's like the worst. It's the total stereotype of the stereotype, right? Like that he
it
walks
is.
in a room, it's like gong.
Like
every time they say his name, gong.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I started the first time I saw it, I was like, oh God, this is going to be really, really rough. But then when they started hitting the gong every time he was even mentioned, that's a joke on a joke that I have to say I laughed more than I care to admit.
I don't want to fault Gedde Watanabe's performance. Like, it's not his fault that they added gongs on the soundtrack.
Exactly.
Or that he's drunk and high all the time. No.
Right.
He's fine. Like, it's not his fault, really. It's the part and, the time, of course, obviously, like, we can look back. I actually posted something on Twitter that we were going to talk about this on the podcast, and somebody tweeted to me about how they were kind of uncomfortable with Dong and Marlene.
You know,
and I was like, oh, like I actually thought, hey, like she's an outcast and so is he, and they like each other, and at least they're like consenting, you know,
Right.
as opposed to some other people in the movie. And he actually thinks that maybe she's not a student there, that she might be a teacher.
I
But
don't
I don't think
so.
that's
I
true.
never got that impression.
Okay, I didn't get that either, but he was like, he's all, it felt a little statutory rapey. And I was like, okay.
I read a little interview with Wanatabe, and he talked about like going to autographing conventions and still being friends with her.
Oh, okay.
And one of the things that's interesting is there was some NPR thing talking about exactly the subject and how he's all these different kinds of stereotypes, and one of them is the kind of emasculated Asian guy, and they talked about how he's essentially the girl in that relationship. She's carrying him around when she's on the exercise bike. He's on her lap, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, yeah, I get that. And there's no denying that there's this racist overtone with the gongs. But if there was more Asian American roles and Asian roles in movies, so this was not, this is the Asian guy from 1984 and this is his only movie. If this was set against a legitimate spectrum of Asian American characters, this would be a fantastic character. He's this kind of, he's all the families look at him like he's a dork and like he's this special foreign whatever, but he's oblivious to it. He's kind of like this Forrest Gump character where he doesn't know that he's supposed to be despised, but you know, by the way the characters around him are looking at it. So he's happy, he's making friends, he's breaking out, he's falling in love, he's doing all this stuff that it's I was, you know, obviously the gongs are a problem, but if you strip that away, that storyline, and you know, I will cop to, this is me talking as a white guy, and I understand the frustration of Asian Americans and what little roles are offered to, you know, that community. But I mean, when you watch that movie, I don't really think you're supposed to be laughing at him. Like there are points where you're laughing at him, but pretty soon you start laughing with him.
Right.
Especially when he starts talking to at the end where he's telling what's his name where Molly Ringwald's going, and he's I mean,
like you could probably take that character completely out of the movie, and the movie would still be it would be okay. However, for me, like Long Duck Dong is like the reason that the movie is so good, because he's this funny character who does all this funny stuff, and like you said, Chris, he's doing he's having the time of his life. You know, as an exchange student, he's getting laid, he's getting high, he's partying. You know, he's doing all these fun stuff that maybe he doesn't do at his other, you know, before, and so that's the whole thing, and so that makes the movie even that much better and funnier because he's in it.
Well, I think so, and the other thing is this movie is about students being locked into their roles and being afraid to come out of their roles and their fear and their this and that. And he just tears through. I mean, if you were to, I think this is the other problem, the other nervousness I have for this, and maybe this is why I react this way, is when people react to a character like this or worried that they're going to put the next Long Duck Dong in their movie, their reaction is, well, we better just cast a white guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if they were remaking 16 Candles now, there would be no Asian character in the movie. They would be so afraid. I think, you know, modern casting directors and modern sensitivities would be so afraid, and this is something I've talked about a lot, that when you don't want to risk as a producer offending a certain community, the default is just get a white person and we won't have to have that headache. And I would just hate to. I don't know. he is obviously has a lot of racist and racial baggage, but I am feeling a little defensive, or I don't know. Maybe I just want to.
I do like what you're saying though about the teenagers and how it is about like getting out of their roles, and he is a really good contrast to Molly Ringwald's character in that she really cares about what people think,
right?
And that's important to her, and he doesn't.
No.
He's just doing his thing, and because he's just doing his thing and doing whatever he wants, he's happier for it.
Right. And I think that's, you know what, that is the other thing. I think that's why I'm pushing back a little bit, is part of the criticism is, well, he shouldn't be with that big girl because she's too big, she's too manly, and it emasculates him. And so there's this weird kind of sexism as highlighting how they shouldn't be dealing with that character. So they kind of like, well, we can't be racist to him towards this. And obviously, if he's going to be with a girl that's 2 feet taller than him, that's emasculating. So we got to get rid of her. There's this weird kind of, musical chairs of sensitivity that I think gets really tied up a little bit. Having said all that, yeah, I don't know why they did the gongs. I do want to throw an idea by you guys, though.
Ready.
And this is why I think watching problematic movies is something that we should do, but we should do with our eyes wide open. Is that gong joke of every time a character is on screen, you play something, even when they're just mentioned, for me, just got funnier and funnier. Because it's just so ridiculous. It wasn't like, obviously when he's on screen, it's just whatever. But when they're talking to him, they're just having this conversation. Molly Ringwald and her mom are having this conversation in the kitchen. And every time he's mentioned, this gong goes off. It's just, I was thinking, like, how insane would it be to be watching Star Wars and every time Darth Vader walks on screen or is mentioned, there's like a little bike honk. Like a little
honk honk
honk honk. If you made a cut of, I don't know, Return of the Jedi, by the time you're finished with that movie, Return of the Jedi would be the funniest movie ever if you just added that little honk. It's such a great bit that is so supernaturally wrong in this movie.
So you're saying you want to see more gongs in movies?
Yeah.
Is what you're
Not
saying.
gongs in movies, but just that kind of weird. Well, that's the other thing, is they don't. It is a different kind of let's try this out kind of filmmaking, which is, they did some other things with sound, and usually I'm not a big fan of dumb sounds for comedy's sake, but like when Molly Ringwald's sister was taking her socks off as she was walking out of the thing, and it kind of takes off. They do this kind of whistle sound. Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of like, and they don't really do this anymore, which is, we are going to try every single thing we can to make people like this movie and make sure they have a good time, and make sure we're going to try every different type of humor. We're going to throw it all at the wall. Like there's that point where Farmer Ted looks at the audience and starts talking to them.
Yeah. I wrote that down in my notes. I was like, what?
Breaks the fifth wall or whatever,
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, what the hell is this? And then it's just, but it's very, actually, I was going to say it's very funny, but it's also, part of me is remembering my initial feeling back in that era watching it and laughing. And then part of me last night was like, 100% with you, Sonia. Holy smokes, this is aged so awfully.
Yeah.
That, and it's funny because I think I've just done this long soliloquy about Geddy Wanatabi, but when it comes to the sexism of this movie and the sexual problems, holy smokes, it is astounding.
Now,
obviously.
I will say, I definitely agree with you. But, I don't think even back then that, date rape was acceptable. I don't think people were saw the movie and were like, "Oh, this is great. Everyone acts this way." I think they knew it was wrong even then. But I think maybe in a lot of ways, maybe it wasn't talked about so much. And so maybe this actually, I was thinking about this might be like one of the first times that like anyone has kind of seen on film kind of date rape. But not, and actually it doesn't even end up happening, but that they're talking about it and they're talking about what they could do.
Right.
And I was like, I think this might be one of the first times like it's ever actually been filmed or talked about in a movie. So in a lot of ways, I think that I don't want to say it's groundbreaking, but it is interesting just to kind of see that this is one of those first instances.
I don't think the movie thinks it's serious at all. Actually,
yeah,
I think the movie's just like, I actually wrote in my notes, like, I actually feel kind of bad for Carolyn. Like,
yeah,
she's not a terrible person.
Right.
No.
She even confronts him at one point and is like, are you screwing around? Like, I'm getting these really crazy signals. And he's like, well, they're not coming from me. And it's like, well, they are coming from you because you're into Molly Ringwald.
Right.
And not her. And so, like, what the worst thing she does is have an awesome body and throw a party at his house.
Right.
And then somehow we're supposed to think it's funny that she like gets her hair cut and then she like drinks too much and passes out, and they discuss like what they're going to do with her,
Right.
like, well, I could just go violate her 10 different ways.
Yeah.
And Farmer Ted's like, well, what are you waiting for? Like, that's what I would do.
Right.
And I was like, that's disturbing.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. And that is one of the things where, it's frustrating because Hollywood movies do this, and I think these are baked in, I guess just awful tropes where we need Molly Ringwald to be sympathetic. We need the boy to want to go after her. So let's give him a girlfriend that's kind of a shrew. But she's not really a shrew. She's not at all. She's like, okay, they had this. Yeah, everything you said was 100% correct. So it's kind of like we're in this weird position where we're supposed to not like her, but she hasn't done anything.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I mean, I never really disliked her from any time I've watched the movie. I've never ever thought, oh, she's a shrew or she's the bad girl or the mean girl. I never got that impression. She's just kind of a victim of circumstance because he no longer is interested in her.
I think I feel like the movie then changes its perception of what they want us to think about her at the end. Because I think before we're supposed to be like, well, she's the nemesis. Like, she needs to go.
Right.
She's not the right girl for Jake, blah, blah, all this stuff. And then at the end, I think they also try to make it sound like Farmer Ted was really drunk too. Therefore, it's not so date rapey.
Oh, they totally do. They totally do.
But I'm not convinced that really works. But
well, yeah, obviously.
Because at the end they're talking about it. Farmer Ted and they're talking about it, and they're like, oh, I don't remember what happened. They both think that they did it. They had sex, but they don't remember it because they were both drunk. So they definitely allude to that.
Well,
then her and Jake then have this conversation at the end where she's like, it's going to be okay if it doesn't work out for us.
Right.
And then they hug, and it's actually really sweet.
Right.
Like a sweet, like mutual breakup of like, hey, like, we're not really into each other. We're just both really popular or whatever. And I don't know. It's like this human moment that she gets that she didn't get in the rest of the movie. Sorry, I just knocked right into the microphone because I'm talking with my hands. She didn't get that in the rest of the movie at all.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, because I was frustrated with this movie last night because it seemed to want to have it both ways. It seemed to want to have it as the Farmer Ted. Do they ever explain why he's called Farmer Ted, by the way? That is the one of the funniest, weirdest names in movie history. He's okay. Anyway, so they want to have it like Farmer Ted finally gets his girl. He finally gets laid. He's got this rep. But it's all built on a house of lies, and he feels self-conscious about it. But it's a front he's got to keep up. And then he finally kind of bags the hottest chick in school. But he doesn't seem to. I don't think. Are we supposed to really believe that they did it? Or are we supposed to believe that they were both so drunk that they think they did it when they really didn't do it? Because before they go to sleep, everything is they're not doing it. He's kind of gotten what he's always wanted, and it's driving him up the wall, and it's really irritating, and he's done with it. But then the next morning is they think they did it, and it was good.
Yeah, I was always under the impression that they didn't do it.
See, I was always under the impression that they did.
Oh, see? Okay, that's interesting.
Well, that's the thing is I think I flipped back and forth, and when I was really watching it close last night, there's no way to know. It's perfectly balanced to if you want to believe they did, they did. If you want to believe they didn't, they didn't. So,
she thinks they did, so that makes me think they did.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. But also, she's so blacked out, she couldn't even tell the difference between her boyfriend and Farmer Ted. So it's completely,
Can I mention something else that was kind of ridiculous in this movie?
Yes.
The idea that Molly Ringwald's sister, Jenny, got her period on her wedding day, and supposedly this is the worst thing that could ever happen to someone.
Well,
you guys, I know you guys are dudes and you don't know that, this is really not that big of a deal. But they make it like a really big deal in the movie.
I agree. I agree 100%. I'm totally with you. I am wondering if there is a certain kind of bridezilla that would kind of freak out about that. But
she is one of those bridezillas. That's why they're all so worked up about this wedding. That's why they forgot Sam's birthday.
Right. Well, the other thing is, and this is another thing I have to say that I read in some of the Gena Watanabe coverage of Long Duck Dong, is this movie has a lot of different stereotypical problems. And, stereotypical issues. There's definitely some problems, but some of it is kind of like they were trying to make a archetypal American high school where, there are different kinds of kids, there are different kinds of hopes, there are different kinds of yearnings and all that kind of stuff. But, when they showed the bride's family and the groom's family having dinner, and it turns out that she's kind of marrying into the mob.
Right.
They literally have the theme to The Godfather playing in the background.
Right.
Like, it's kind of funny, but it's kind of like, all right, I guess there's this. And, like, they are not doing anything subtly here.
Yeah. But then they have all these moments that are so true.
Yes.
And honest. Like when Sam goes into her room and her grandparents are there and she's like, "How are you guys?" And they start listing all the things that are wrong with them.
Right.
It's like that is something that like grandparents do, or like the grandpa calls her like Sammy Baker Davis Jr., and how just all these things that just felt really, the conversation between her and her dad.
Right.
The line you mentioned about crushes, or even like the scene where she's in the auto shop sitting in the car and Farmer Ted comes in and he's acting a fool or whatever. And she leans over and like unlocks the door for him to get in with her, even though like he could just do it because there's no top on the car. Or,
right.
It's like this little gesture. It's like this nice.
Right.
Thing, and the movie has like so many of those things that are so sweet and nice and true and fun,
right? Like
wrapped around it is racism and date rape.
Well, that's true. That's right. And you know what? I think you're 100% right. when it comes,
I'm gonna make that my ringtone.
that is when it comes to the magic of this movie is all those little tiny moments, and I think that is a little bit why I was getting into Long Duck Dong and Ginny. No, it's not Ginny. What's the name of the girl that he goes out with? What was that?
Oh, Marlene.
Right. They do have this weird, fun energy. Like she's portrayed as the kind of the big girl around school that nobody pays attention to, because he's kind of fawning over her and, oh, men must be, dropping at your feet, and she's all, well, not really. And watching their weird energy, like when they get to the party and she kind of kicks the door open from reverse.
Yeah.
And then gets this weird, funny look on her face, and then just walks off. It's just this such weird energy that's so fun to watch. And which brings me to my question for you guys is, has anybody ever had a hotter, more with it, more in sync performance than Anthony Michael Hall as Farmer Ted in any movie?
He is gold in this movie.
Yeah.
He is so gold. Like when you take Eddie Murphy's star-making 48 Hours performance from like 1982 and you put it up against this Farmer Ted performance, I'm wondering why Anthony Michael Hall did not have a volcanic career. I'm wondering why he's not Tom Hanks. Looking at him give this performance, it was so fun and ridiculous and vulnerable and weird, and just, oh my god, it was
not vain at all. He was never afraid to like look stupid or come across as the geek that he's playing,
right?
But he played him with serious heart, not like a hard rimmed glasses, pocket protector. I'm a geek, you guys.
Yeah,
right.
Like he's played like someone that you would actually know.
Yeah, he's playing like the blowhard kid in school that's trying to put on a front. And it's kind of like, even though his performance is driving you up a wall, it's kind of like, I could be friends with this guy if he would just dial it back 3 clicks.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Well, and one of the things that also is really great about the movie, and I think Peter touched on it earlier, they actually got teenagers to play teenagers.
Right.
So he's really good, and Molly Ringwald's really good, and they're just, she's adorable.
Right.
She's adorable.
And she's definitely, like, you could feel like the teen angst coming from her when she's when these things are happening to her and she's embarrassed, when she shouldn't be, and by the little things, and that's how like teens act. Teens act that way.
Right.
So it's, teens acting like teens. Playing teens. It's the way it should be. Not 25-year-olds or 27-year-olds playing teenagers like we see now.
Yeah.
So let me ask you. I'm
like
gonna...
Jake Ryan. I think he's 24. But he's not Stockard Channing old. He's not Stockard Channing Reese old.
That's right. So let me ask you then this. So we're talking over about this, and I don't know, maybe I am seeing this through such the lens of, should we throw this away or should we not? There's this in Dead Poet Society. Robin Williams is giving a class in poetry, and as one of the examples of how awful poetry is taught, they're talking about this coordinate system you can use to figure out the worth of a poem. And it's, along the x-axis, talk about the importance, or, put a number for the importance of the poem. Along the y-axis, put a number for the, artistic flair or whatever. And the area that you carve out in the thing is the worth of the poem. And then you can know mathematically what a poem is worth, it's presented as this kind of ridiculous, bloodless, thoughtless, charmless way to think about art. However, I have to say there is a little bit in there that I really like, because there is an aspect to thinking about the worth of art that some things are all within the eye of the beholder, and some things are, like I was trying to say at the beginning of this movie had an impact. We can pretend like
Right.
it's this thing that we'd like to shrug off and forget, but that's kind of letting ourselves off the hook in doing that, I guess. That's what I've been trying to say this whole time. And I'm wondering,
and John Hughes went on a run after
Yes.
this movie.
yes,
definitely.
So my question is, if you take the problems with the movie set up against the charms of the movie or the strengths of the movie, is it like 50-50, 30-70, 20-80? I mean, because I think the way a lot of people talk about this movie, it's like, oh, it's 90% shit, get rid of it, throw it out of the culture, it's no good. And I don't know if you could do that.
Speaking of John Hughes going on a run, this is what he did after 16 Candles.
Right.
Breakfast Club, Weird Science, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, She's Having a Baby, Uncle Buck, and Curly Sue. Like, all within the span of 6 years.
So Curly Sue.
Yeah. Oh, and Pretty in Pink's in there, and Some Kind of Wonderful's in there.
Yeah, if you
Right?
want to take him as just a writer and take the directing out.
Right. Those are just movies he directed, not
Right.
Yeah.
not right. But
Yeah.
he wrote Pretty in Pink. He wrote National Lampoon's Vacation, all those.
Well, yeah, exactly. Oh my God,
Mr. Mom.
He wrote Mr. Mom.
He wrote,
I was
he
just
wrote
gonna say-
Mr. Mom.
Look at this. Actually, yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. You're 100% right. I have to look at this. So he goes from Vacation to Mr. Mom to 16 Candles to The Breakfast Club to Weird Science, Pretty in Pink, Ferris Bueller, Some Kind of Wonderful, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Jesus, when you take his directing out, his run becomes 3 times more impressive, I think.
Yeah.
Jesus, what a...
I mean, he's like the quintessential 80s director writer.
Oh, my God, yes. So...
Well, in these movies, they were... They're like the Marvel movies of their time. Like, it was a big deal when a new John Hughes movie was coming out. Teenagers were like into these movies.
Yeah.
Everybody saw The Breakfast Club. Everybody saw Pretty in Pink. Everyone hated the end of Pretty in Pink. Everyone saw Weird Science. Like, Ferris Bueller's Day Off was like one of the biggest movies that year.
Mega hit. Yeah,
Right.
mega hit.
Wait, hold on. Why did they all hate the end of Pretty in Pink? Am I totally forgetting what happened in the end of Pretty in Pink?
Well, at the end, she like gets back together with Andrew McCarthy, and she doesn't choose Ducky.
Well, let me ask you this.
Everybody hates that.
So,
Although it's probably the more realistic ending.
right. Well, if I remember correctly, tell me if I'm remembering this correctly, because I think I watched Pretty in Pink and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Sorry. Yeah, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. They're the same movie, right? No. I used to work at a video shop back in the late 80s. I used to watch movies 24/7. Pretty in Pink and Some Kind of Wonderful are essentially the same movie, except the ending is the opposite.
Yes.
And I think I
Right.
even
That is
remember
correct.
that back then. It's like, man, what a life to live, where you can essentially take the same movie, put an ending on the same script, and sell it twice.
Oh, and he swapped the genders.
Oh, that's
Right.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah, but yes, they are the same.
So now that we've talked it through, now that we've thought it through, what's your esteem of this movie now, do you think? How does it rest with you?
I'm struggling with that because, like I said, this was something I watched so much as a kid, so I watch it now and I still kind of have those nostalgia glasses on
Right.
where I'm just like, I remember how much I loved this. I loved it. But I can't get past, but the parts that I don't like, I really don't like.
Right.
So I don't see me sitting down and watching it again anytime soon.
Well, for you, because I've kind of blabbered about my feelings for that kind of dilemma. For you, then, do certain pieces of culture just, when they have certain things that don't age well, do they just drop off your kind of radar, or?
No, I guess they don't, because No, well, I mean, how can they?
Right. Right.
You've seen it. It means something to you, whether, it's aged bad or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Like, it doesn't matter that, in that way, it doesn't matter that the movie hasn't aged well, because I still quoted it all through high school, and
right.
like, I can't go back in time and make myself more aware of the movie's faults.
Right.
Chris, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Like, what you said, you had your kids watch it, right? Your teenagers.
Dell, my son Dell, I talked to him about it today, and he didn't watch it with me. But
okay,
I
so
watched
I'm
it last
wondering
night, but he watched it and he loved it.
I was going to ask, like, what did he think of it? Did he think it was outrageous that there's this much like racism and sexism and date rape and everything in it, or was he just basing it on the movie itself?
He liked it, but I think that's the other thing is movies. This was made at a time when there was for all the fantastical gong jokes that I was talking about earlier, there was a drive towards, and especially with John Hughes, making these teenagers as authentic as they could be. And that included awful aspects of them, where there were, was a drive in boys, especially at that age, to just try to get laid, and that's it. You know what I mean? And I think we're fooling ourselves. I try very hard to bring my boys up right, and I talk to them about respecting women and all that kind of stuff, but I think we're kind of fooling ourselves if we don't acknowledge that there is that strain, and that kids are young and they make dumb mistakes. They do dumb things and they want dumb things, and they drive towards dumb things sometimes, and not including them in movies like this, I think is, it makes us feel better, but I don't think it does something that art is essential for, which is kind of examining how people really react and how people really deal with certain things. And and actually, now that I'm stepping back, when you make that commitment, things are not going to age well. Things are not going to go, I could really imagine if you were to make this movie in 1910, you would, instead of saying, derogatory things towards gay people, they would be saying, the hero would be saying derogatory things towards black people, and they would be, but that character in that time would be supposedly the character you're supposed to sympathize with. So I guess I am struggling, because I'm saying all this stuff about, well, we need to keep culture, we need to watch it with a critical eye, but not forget about it. But then, there's almost no culture left of the 1800s that we can pay attention to anymore. Right. I'm sure, there's, what do we have? We have Sherlock Holmes, we have The Scarlet Letter, we have Charles Dickens, and that's about it.
This past weekend I went and saw Love, Simon, which is a teenage comedy. It's the first, I think it might be one of the first ones starring like a gay protagonist. Like, the gay character isn't playing like the wacky best friend. He's actually the romantic lead. It's a very good movie. It's very sweet. And now I'm wondering, oh my God, 30 years from now, am I going to be like, that movie's a piece of shit? Because this happened and that happened and this happened and blah, blah, blah. But I don't think so. But maybe I'm naive.
That's the thing. I think that's what I'm trying to say. And I'm not it sounds like I'm saying it to you on this podcast, but I'm kind of trying to say it to the whole generation, is if we think that, we're fooling ourselves. We are ridiculous. Because then you step back, has there ever been a time where culture was made and 30 years later everybody watched it and went, yep, that's great, perfect, keep trucking?
Well, I will say, like,
Nothing.
it was interesting to watch. I watched this on Thursday night, 16 Candles, and then on Friday night I went and saw Love, Simon, and that's a movie that's being, I think, very careful about it's being inclusive and sending the right messages, and it wants to, it has to do everything right, because if it doesn't, people are just going to get all over it. Right. So I would be surprised if 30 years from now, there was something like a gong.
No, I agree. I agree.
But I just keep thinking about it. I was like, oh, is there something like that in that movie?
Probably not. Probably not. I totally agree with you. There's the gong part is, and I'll admit to my own disentanglement of the long duck dong issue. Like the gong and the whatever. I think what happened is I could see the hand of the director messing with it, and the director and the sound guy and the editor, and I could see the hand of the actor doing the character. And I was having fun going off with the actor and the character. It's like the gong part, I like the joke in theory, but the execution was just holy smokes.
What did you think about John and Joan Cusack and their small roles?
I really liked them. I loved watching John Cusack and the other nerd guy, their whole dynamic. Yeah. I laughed. There's a million little jokes upon jokes about, like, for example, so they go to this party and John Cusack and his other geek friend Wheeze get, they mess up this thing, and these four big burly jock guys get mad at them. Then cut to after the party, the four big burly jock guys were nice enough to drive them home, but they stuck them in the trunk. So they open up the trunk, they grab John Cusack, bring him out, and instead of just climbing out, the Wheeze kind of shuffles over in the trunk. So it's like easy for the guy to pick him up. So then the guy picks him up and sticks him out, and they just see you later, and then they're off.
Yeah.
And it's,
do you think they liked us? Definitely.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing. Is maybe they did like them, because why the hell else would they drive them home? They didn't beat them up and leave them in a field. They didn't do any of this stuff. They said, "Hey, where do you guys live?" "Oh, well, we live on the corner of this and that, and can you give us a ride home?" "Sure, get in the trunk." So there's this.
So they think enough of them to give them a ride home, but not enough of them to let them ride in the car.
Exactly. So and that's the thing is all of that whole interaction. 15% of it is on screen, and 100% of the work that's on screen is just the Wheeze kind of shuffling over in the trunk. And there's this whole backstory.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's all those little types of things, which is just, that's what's so fantastic about this movie. It's just such a weird, Russian doll of stories that it's fantastically observed. It's fantastically executed, but the blind spots of its era are punching us in the face 30 years later. So
what do you think? Let me ask you guys, what are your favorite John Hughes movies? Out of maybe say the high school ones.
Well, yeah, it's funny. He had a pretty crazy drop off, and once you get to Home Alone, his output goes
right.
It takes a nosedive, and I cannot figure it out. It's like he was incredibly hot for 10 years, and then he just, I have a huge soft spot. I really like Some Kind of Wonderful. I have a huge soft spot for Breakfast Club, and my boys love The Breakfast Club, and I still think that holds up a lot better than this.
My only big issue with Breakfast Club is I don't like that they give Ali Sheedy a makeover at the end. Because I think she looks cool just the way she is.
True.
So yeah, I love Uncle Buck. Uncle Buck's is just a great movie in my opinion. It's got a lot of dark humor in it too, which is really fun. And I love John Candy. John
Candy.
Great Outdoors is a great movie. Weird Science is a lot of fun. Also, I believe Kelly LeBrock is in that movie, which the 9-year-old me really liked. So that's always there.
Weird Science. It's so funny. Like, that's not the one that I would necessarily say is my favorite. And I was like, but if I was honest with myself, it might be the one I quote the most. Like all the stuff with Chet.
Was that
all
his
of it?
first...
Like make yourself one, dickweed. Like all of that, like everything he does. Yeah.
Is he
Bill Paxton? It's Bill Paxton.
Bill Paxton.
Yeah, was that? Hold on. No, I guess that wasn't his. I guess he was in Terminator the year before, but that was like Bill Paxton's first big role, wasn't it?
I don't know.
I don't know.
We'd have to look it up, but
yeah.
Boy,
I
quoted
big asshole.
Yeah, we quoted Chet a lot in my house. We still do.
I have a feeling that Weird Science probably doesn't age that great. I don't know.
I'm sure it doesn't.
Probably not.
But
you know what else doesn't? Revenge of the Nerds.
No.
Oh, yeah. You know what it is?
No.
Yeah. Yes. I have a suspicion that Revenge of the Nerds was, because being a nerdy kid, like, I liked it at the time, but like,
oh my God, yeah.
All of its
they put cameras in the girl dorms.
Yeah,
exactly.
This one's Revenge of the Nerds is super rapey.
Oh, that is super creepy stalker stuff.
He tricks her into having sex with him.
Yeah, right. And they had that whole like they put on masks and go into the girls' dorm and set up all the cameras everywhere.
God, yeah. I haven't seen it since the 80s, thank God. I have a suspicion that if we were to watch it again, I would not be doing nearly the defending that I am doing with 16 Candles. I do have to say, though, I'm probably not the first to say it. Maybe I'll be the last. I have to say, I would pay real money for a quality Ferris Bueller's Day Off sequel. 30 years later of him blowing off work. Maybe that's what I need. You get to this age where work is kind of like an endless school. Yeah. Where you just have to go every day and it's just like, screw this, I'm out. But I don't know.
And his boss is trying to find him and catch him so he could fire him.
Yes, exactly. Ferris works for, the Republican National Committee or something, and he sees what's going on.
No,
and
that would be so depressing.
He doesn't want to deal with any of this, so he's like, you know what? Anthony, Scaramucci, let's get the hell out of here. And then he's... Sonia,
Unfortunately, his boss made him sign a non-disclosure agreement.
That's right. So, Sonia, what's your favorite movie of this era? John Hughes movie of this era?
Well, it used to be 16 Candles. I love Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That one might be my fave.
Yeah.
I love Cameron in particular. I think he's really funny.
Yeah.
Ferris Bueller, you're my hero.
That's right. So you guys are aware of the Tyler Durden theory of Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
Yes.
All right.
No, what is this? I don't know this.
That is the Ferris is actually a figment of Cameron's imagination.
Oh, okay. I can see that.
Gets him to go out and do all this crazy stuff and cut loose and whatever. And so that's the Tyler Durden theory of Ferris Bueller.
In my research, I discovered that Ali Sheedy almost played Molly Ringwald's part, and that Viggo Mortensen almost played Jake Ryan.
Holy smokes! Oh my God! Oh wow! I would have watched that. Was Viggo Mortensen? Has he acted for that long? Has he been in acting that long? Jesus. No kidding. Wow.
So there you go.
That would have been not bad. So, I thought of a new game last night, which is that I think we should play on these deep dorking outs, which is what could this be the prequel or the sequel to?
Okay.
And
my example was
the Wheeze with his night vision goggles, you could squint your eyes and think of him as Buffalo Bob a few years later. he graduates. Buffalo Bill. He graduates. He has a few bad years. He's finally out of the oppressive weight of social expectations in high school. He cuts free and cuts a little too free, and there you go. Then there's also Actually, this is the other thing. Sorry. Then there's also could be a weird sequel to Poltergeist.
Wow, that's a stretch.
With the organist lady.
Yeah.
She's actually, she's the seance person from
Her
Poltergeist.
day job.
Her day job. Her day job is organist.
Yeah. And at night, she cleans houses.
Stop. Her day job is being the Poltergeist spirit talker. And then on the weekends, she was never able to get her band off the ground. So she likes to play the organ at the church.
That works.
So actually, let me ask you this. Hold on, I gotta dive into this. There's that thing where she's walking out of the church and she walks by Molly Ringwald getting her sister's veil. Did you guys hear Peter, it's been a while since you've seen this, so I don't know. What is going on with her walking?
It's making like a squeaking noise. Well, like maybe it's her shoes.
Well, I think what it is, and I think I read this somewhere, but maybe I'm just conflating it, is it sounds like a one of those hip flasks. Like she's got a hip flask full of booze, and every time she walks, it splashes a little bit.
Maybe that's it.
Which is
I thought it was just another one of those like sound gimmicks that they put in there, like the gongs.
I think it is
just to be clever, be funny, just to try to do it a little something else with it.
I think you're 100% right. I think that's exactly what it is. But for me, that joke is so funny because they don't comment on it. She doesn't pull it out at the end of the shot and take a swig. There's nothing. It's just this weird splashy sound every time she takes a step. It is so, and that's the kind of thing is they're cramming in so much, to be funny or whatever, or to do whatever. Right, Zelda Rubinstein. She's the organist in 16 Candles, and she's the
spirit talker.
Spirit talker in Poltergeist.
I think this movie is a prequel to Working Girl.
Interesting.
Where Joan Cusack's character gets her neck brace off and gets a job as a receptionist in New York City.
Exactly. That is fantastic. That totally works. So so I guess I don't have a whole lot. Maybe I should throw this out, and we should think about this the next time we do a show.
Yes.
There we go.
The unlikely prequel or sequel.
So start thinking now about what you want to say for Revenge of the Nerds.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding. We'll pick something.
Let's
pick something a little less date rapey.
Well, that's the thing, because there are some pieces of culture, and that's kind of what I was thinking is there are some pieces of culture that they fall apart so completely that you have to leave them relatively quickly. This one has got a huge amount of problems, but there's still a huge amount of stuff in there that's worth something. And it's a tough call.
Yeah.
So I don't know. All right. Is there anything else that we would like to say about 16 Candles before we kick this out and I destroy my reputation forever?
Peter, do you have anything else to say? Peter, where can people find you on the internet?
I am at Peter Brown AX on Twitter or assignmentx.com.
Excellent. Thanks for coming on the show, Peter.
Yeah, thanks, man.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
Always fun having you on.
So,
Smith?
Thanks for having.
Yes.
Is there anything you'd like to say?
I'll just say bye.
Bye.